Hey Nob Hill Nighthawks, here we are with module 1, lesson 9. Today we're going to be successful when I can use place value understanding to round multi-digit numbers to any place value. So what that means today is that we are going to be rounding numbers to all the place values, but we're going to do it without the number line. So we're going to use our understanding of rounding to do the rounding instead of using that visual model. Okay? So our first number that we're going to work with is 4,333, and we're going to round this number to our nearest thousands place. Okay, so our rounding rules, that rounding understanding is we always look to the number to the right, and that's going to help us determine if we round this up to the next thousand or stay at 4,000. Okay, so we look to the right. We see a 3. We know that if it's the number to the right is less than 5, then we round down. So if we look to the right, we see a 3. Our lower thousand is 4,000. Our high end would be 5,000. If you kind of visualize your number line we've been working with, our midpoint would be 4,500. So you can still think out the number lines that we've been doing to help you round. But if you know those rounding rules, then you can just base it off of that as well. So 4,333, we would round to 4,000. Okay, didn't need to use a number line. We used that rounding understanding to do that. Okay, let's do another one. If I have 65,600, we're going to round this to the nearest 10,000. Again, we need to look and see if we're rounding to the nearest 10,000s. My low end would be 60,000. My high end would be 70,000. Okay. When I look to the right, I see a 5. What do we know about rounding? If the number to the right is 5 or more, we round up. So because I already identified my high point as 70,000, then we know that this is going to round to 70,000. Okay. And this is true for any place value. So if we round to hundreds, if we round to 10,000s, 100,000s, it's all, the rules stay the same. So if I have 548,253, and I'm going to round to the nearest 10,000s, it's always important that you identify the place value that you're rounding to, because then you have to look to the right. So if you just guess and say, oh, they're rounding to the nearest 10,000s or 100,000s and guess, I mean, you have a 50-50 chance, but why not just take that extra time to double check your work, look to the right, follow the rounding rules, and make sure you get that solid answer. So if we look to the right, we see an 8. 8 is more than 5. So that means we're going to be rounding up. When I look at this, I have 548,000. So I know my lower end would be 540,000. My high end would be one more, which would be 550,000. And when I look to the right, it is larger than 5. So that means we're going to be rounding up to that higher, our higher end point. If we are imagining our number line, 550,000 would be that higher end point. So this goes up 1. Okay. So we would round this to 550,000. It is a little quicker without the number line. If you guys want to use that to double check your work, that's completely fine. You can do the rounding without it, following the rules, and then afterwards you can use that number line to double check your work. That's 100% fine. If you're still feeling kind of iffy on your rounding, I would highly recommend you take that time to double check your work. Okay. So our next number is 147,591. We're going to round this to the nearest 100,000. Okay. So we're going to look to the right. We have a 4. Think of your rounding rules. So 4 is less than 5, which means we're going to round down. So if we're rounding to the nearest 100,000, our low point would be 100,000. Our high point is one more, which would be 200,000. But because our number to the right is 4, that's less than 5, which means we are going to round down to 100,000. And like I said, you're not sure, you think you're right, but you're not 100% sure. Draw that number line out, double check your work so you are 100% confident. Okay, so here's our last problem of the day. We're gonna round the same number to 3 different place values and see the difference, okay? So our number is 765,903. For starters, we're gonna round it to the nearest 1,000. So we're gonna identify our thousands place and look to the right. So if I'm rounding to the nearest 1,000 and I picture that number line, my low end would be 765,903. So because our number is 765,000, that would be our lower end, the low point on that vertical number line. One more would be higher, so 766,000 would be our high point. So because our number to the right is a 9, that means we're rounding up to our high point of 766,000. And you can also notice, well, 765,000, that'd be my midpoint. 903, that's going to put it just a little above that midpoint. Okay. So now we're going to round it to the nearest 10,000. It's really important that you know your place values, because if it's asking you to round to your nearest 10,000 and you round to your 100,000 or you round to your thousands place, you're going to get a wrong answer. So memorizing your place value is that place value chart, and where each place value is going to be really important as well. Okay. So round nearest 10,000. Here's our 10,000s place. My low end is going to be 760,000. High point would be one more. So this would turn to a 7. So it would be 770,000. So our low point 760, high point 770. When I look to the right, I see the 5, which means I need to round up. So our nearest 10,000 would be 770,000. Okay, last one is 100,000. Identify your 100,000s place. We look to the right and we see a 6. That tells us, thinking of the rounding rules, we're going to be rounding up to the next highest 100,000. So 700,000 would be our low point. One more would be 8. So our high point is 800,000, which means we're going to round this number to 800,000. So I want you to look at these numbers, okay? In our next lesson, we're going to talk a lot more about it, but when we get into word problems and they ask you to round, for example, they might say, about how much money did they spend on the 5 items? You would want to round to a place value that's going to get you as close to the actual number as possible, but allow you to add those easier. So when you look at this, 766,000 is the closest to the actual number in comparison to our other ones. 770,000 still pretty close. It's about 5,000 off, but 1,000's only off by 1. So when we get to strategizing and it says round to any place value, you're going to want to think, well, which place value could I round to get to the closest actual number as possible? And it's usually going to be one of the smaller place values. The higher you get, the further away it might get from the actual number, okay? But we'll talk more about that in lesson 10, which is also coming at you this week. Again, as always, if you have questions, comment, and we'll be working on this in small groups this week too, so you can get a little extra practice. All right, you guys, keep being awesome. Have a great afternoon, and I will see you soon.